Hey, welcome back to another new gear episode. This time I picked up a Rivera Bonehead. I was actually looking for a knucklehead reverb and a knucklehead, and I was going to do a kind of A/B comparison between those two amps because they sound really similar, but they're actually a lot different. And I still want to do that at some point, but this one was on Reverb. It was also on I think the gear page classifieds for a while, and it wasn't moving. So I made a deal on it, and it's kind of a unique amp. Apparently it was designed for Steve Lukather. He had kind of his own take on what voicing he wanted, and I guess he liked the knucklehead already or something like that. It's a very, very similar amp in layout to a knucklehead reverb. If I had to guess, it probably is really, really similar on the inside. I don't have my hands on a schematic or anything yet, but hopefully I can get one. But basically you have three channels. You've got channel 1, which is a clean, channel 2 and 3, which are both, I played it a few minutes ago, and they both sound really, really similar to me. I can't hear any major differences, but I guess the idea is you have one set up for rhythm and one for leads, but they both seem to have about the same amount of gain, which is not that abnormal for other 3-channel amps. And then you have this power amp section with presence and focus. Focus is kind of like your density or depth or whatever you want to call it control. And then you also have this third control called low bottom control, which only works with a special amp cabinet that Rivera was making around this time, where you basically had like 2 regular speakers and then a powered subwoofer speaker for like really, really low end. And you can control the amount of that with this level control, and then there's a separate jack in the back that you connect to that part of the cabinet. I don't actually have one of those cabinets. I've only seen one for sale once. I think probably you conflict a lot with your bass player, and since most people are using a cabinet like this Marshall cabinet I'm playing through here, mic'd up running through like a PA or something like that, there's probably not a lot of reason to have a subwoofer on your guitar cab, but it is a very cool idea and definitely unique. I've never seen any other amp have that control besides the other knuckleheads. So I'm going to play it real quick. Let me grab this. I have a Hamer Californian from 1990. Really, really sweet guitar, maple fretboard, and parallel axis bridge pickup and a parallel axis stack in the neck if I use that. So right now I'm on channel 1, and I'll just kind of see how that sounds. This channel also has all 3 of the EQ controls, bass, middle, and treble, have a pull function. So the treble you pull and it's bright, the mids you pull and it's a notch, and the bass you pull and it's called contour, and it sounds to me like it just adds a lot of bass. It's kind of a dark, clean channel to begin with. And I do have 2 inputs. There's a high gain and a low gain input, so I'll see if that affects the tone, but if I had to guess, most likely it's just skipping a gain stage or something like that. And then all 3 channels also have a boost, and I suppose this is as good a time as any to talk about this crazy foot switch that it comes with. Basically you have channel select channels 1, 2, and 3, the effects loop on and off, and then each channel also has a separate button that engages the boost. And something that is kind of cool about this is, say I'm on channel 2, this LED lights up. I can also turn the boost on that channel, switch to a different channel or whatever, and when I come back to that channel, the boost will stay on. So you can turn on the boost, like if I wanted channel 3 to always be boosted, I could hit that in advance, and then whenever I go to channel 3, it'll always be boosted. So that's kind of cool. It sort of remembers what your settings were. So and then it also has a kind of interesting plastic covered cable, I guess designed to prevent the cable from getting damaged in transit. It's a cool idea. Anyway, but all 3 channels have that boost, so I'll flip that on and off too so you can hear it. And then obviously I'll do a really in-depth video on this amp too, especially if I can get my hands on a schematic, but we'll just listen to how it sounds right now. So with the bright switch on. Now the notch on. And now with the contour. Wow, so there's a lot of tonal variation in that channel, just pulling the switches around. And the boost, you could get a little bit of drive, as you heard. There's a volume and a master that are separate, so I have the volume set at 5 right now. I assume I could set the master lower and turn the volume all the way up and probably get even more drive out of that channel. I'm just going to go ahead and jump over to channel 2. Let's see how much gain I can get out of that channel. This is that was with the volume on 5, and I clicked the boost on and off. This is with the gain on 10. That sounds pretty good. The bass is a little loose. I actually have the bass turned down to about 4. It's definitely not the tightest amp, but maybe boosted it could tighten up. And I'll go to channel 3. Right now I have the gain at 8, but it's basically the exact same channel. But I do have the mid scooped out a little bit on channel 3 right now. I don't know, I think that's a pretty awesome sounding amp. I'm really excited to see how it's going to sound once I spend a little bit more time tweaking it. It's very dark, it's kind of loose at the low end, but I think that there's a lot of potential here. It has a certain sort of like grit to the distortion, and this is what I heard last time I played a knucklehead. Granted, it's been 3 or 4 years now since I got to play one of those, but it has that sort of like gritty but dark sounding distortion tone to it. Let's try real quick with a tube screamer in front on channel 3. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. So I'm pleased with that. Can't wait to play it a little bit more. And let me grab the next thing that I got for you. And I'll set this to power off. And give me just 1 second to grab it. All right. So the next one that I got is this Chariotone AH50 Deluxe, which is basically supposed to be like a Friedman Brown Eye 50 Deluxe. It's a 3-channel amp. You've got a clean channel and then 2 drive channels that share controls. So I'm really excited about this one. I have a King Kong already, and I'm really excited to compare the two. Let that heat up for a second. So this amp, you've got a clean channel that just has basically volume, treble, middle, bass. And then you have a 3-way bright switch on it, just like the real Friedman Brown Eye has. And then you have, for the distortion channels, you have gain 1 and gain 2, but they're not the same channel. So gain 1 is like overdrive channel 1, and gain 2 is the gain for the second overdrive channel. They share a treble, middle, bass section. Then they have separate master volume controls, a presence, a resonance control, and then there's also a negative feedback control that you can, on a pot, which is really, really cool because you can sort of adjust how much negative feedback the amp has, which to my ear introduces some sort of upper, mid, high frequencies for a lot more cut. If you turn the negative feedback way, way down, it's a lot more mellow sounding, which could be cool for like plexitones or something like that. And it's a little bit different. It's in the same head shell box as my King Kong, which is over there. But the King Kong is only 2 channels. You have a basically a 68 plexi kind of setup on the clean side, and then the distortion side you have 2 gain channels with separate diode control switches, bright switches, and that one is a little bit more. It's got a couple more switches to tweak and sounds a little bit different. And I can't wait to A/B these 2 amps. I haven't had the chance to do that yet, but I'm definitely going to. Another thing about this amp is on the gain control or gain channels, they also have these little switches. There's a thick switch, a voice switch, and a texture switch. I barely hear any difference on the voice and the texture switches. It's really, really subtle change. But the thick switch definitely is noticeable, especially in the low mids. So I have that turned on. I really like the way it sounds. And then on the back of the amp, there's an era switch, which introduces some diodes over the master volume so you could get even more drive. Right now I have that turned off. And then there's a saturation switch, which is just like the real Friedman one, which also introduces some diodes into the circuit, gets you some more gain. And I do have that saturation switch turned on at the moment, but I'll turn it off so you can hear what it sounds like. Let me grab my guitar. We'll plug in up here. And I should be able to get the schematic for this amp. So I'll definitely be doing a video where I go over the schematic and kind of talk about how it's set up compared to other Marshalls and that sort of thing. Once I can get my hands on that, because right now I just have the build information. So it's definitely a little bit brighter sounding than the Rivera's clean channel for sure. And that's before I've even engaged the bright switch. So right now the bright switch is off. So to the left adds just a little bit of brightness. And if I go to the right, it gets really, really bright. I think I like it to the left where it's there, but it's not so bright that it's really, really cutting like that. But it's nice to have that extra bright switch option, especially for like recording, because, you know, the way I'm listening to it in the room, it's going to sound a little different on the recording. And if you wanted a clean that cuts a little bit more, it's really nice to have that option. I'll jump over to the distortion channels. The foot switch on this amp is just a 2-button. I'm just using a generic 1/4-inch jack 2-button foot switch right now that I got off of Amazon for 12 bucks or something like that. And the way it works is 1-button switches from the clean side of the amp to the distortion side of the amp, and then the second button switches between the 2 different distortion channels. So here's clean, switch. So that's the first distortion channel. If I hit the other button, hear how much more gain that introduces. So right now I have the gain on channel, I guess the overdrive channel, set to about 4, which is kind of a nice like crunch tone. There's definitely some bass missing from this amp. And I might be saying that just because I just played the Rivera, which maybe was too bassy. But right now I have the bass turned all the way up, and the thick switch is on, so this is as bassy as it's going to get, really, unless I just go crazy with the resonance control, which is a little bit different than the kind of sound that I want. I want a little bit more low mids. But you definitely would have no problem cutting through the mix with an amp like this, because it's got a lot of presence, a lot of punch, a lot of upper mid emphasis. Let's go to the heavy overdrive channel. I have the gain at about 8 and the saturation switch is on. All right, let me try turning the negative feedback up. So I don't really hear a big difference in the negative feedback between, I'd say, about 0 to 3. There's a pretty noticeable difference, and then 3 up to the top of the control is 11. There's a barely noticeable difference in brightness, but yeah, I think I'll probably have to tweak it a little bit more. If I take the gain too much higher, I'll get a lot more, noise, and it just doesn't quite have that like low end punch like I was expecting. It's a really great tone. It just needs a little bit more low mids for me, I think. Let me turn that saturation switch off in the back and you can hear the difference here. So. And if I go back to channel 1, it's definitely a great sounding amp, very, very bright and cutting. Can't wait to compare it to the King Kong because those two should complement each other really well. Sort of a similar hot-rodded Marshall tone, but accomplished in different ways. And I think overall it's really, really great. These two amps, super, super pleased. And then I guess I have one last little bonus thing. Even though I definitely should not have done this, I actually ended up returning the Mesa Mark IV combo that I had in that previous video, the first episode of New Gear that I did. And the reason why I returned it was I actually went and bought a Mark IV head. So yeah, I couldn't resist. I had to have one. And I love the Mark IV a lot. I wanted one that was a proper replacement for the Mark IV head that I sold. So I bought another one and I returned the combo. I'm just going to be a lot happier with the head over the combo, but it does make me already miss the Celestion C90 speaker that was in that combo. I thought that sounded really awesome. So probably I'll look for a used one. Or a pair, something like that, and use it in like this old 1x12 I have over here, something like that. Either way, super, super excited. I also have a couple of other amps and things on the way, so there'll be another one of these videos in pretty short order once those arrive. I also have 2 orders into Guitar Center for amps that maybe were the wrong price or something. I don't know. I won't hold my breath because I've done that before and had them just end up canceling the order. But in theory, I might be getting a JVM 410 soon. I had one before and I didn't particularly like it, but since I've reviewed all the Marshalls already, or at least a lot of them, I figured I should get a JVM and at least do a video on it, even though I didn't like the one that I had originally, and then I can always sell it later or something like that. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.